Welcome to the Old Mac Gang podcast, or OMG for short, the show where longtime Mac and Apple users come together to share practical tips, everyday workflows, and honest takes on Apple technology. I'm Marty Gensius, and I've got a great panel of folks together for tonight, and we're going to talk about something I think Chris came up with the idea of talking about continuity. And the continuity is important part of how Apple kind of operates everything together. And so we're going to talk about our experience with continuity and how it works for us, and then you might apply some of those to your scenario. We have also a lot of really good articles in the show links that I will breeze through a little bit, but the links will be there for you to look at and connect with some of these articles that will inform you more about the how-tos of doing this instead of the how-whys, which is what we'll be talking probably a little bit more about today. So tonight our panel shares what clicked for them, what's caused confusion, and tips they'd pass on to anyone just trying to make their devices play nice together. So let's get into it. Tonight's panel, start with Peter.
Hi, I'm Peter. I'm a 73-year-old Apple enthusiast from Bay Village, Ohio, a former foundryman and educator and current retiree. I enjoy chatting about all the gear and accessories I use and the so much more that I wish I had with this old gang in our audience. Charlie.
Hi, I'm Charlie Lindahl in North Houston, Texas. I'm retired also, and having a blast doing stuff like this, and I love being on this podcast. I thank Chris and Marty for inviting me to it, and as you can see from this one and also from previous ones that have been recorded, we have a lot of fun. So with that, I'm going to pass on to Chris.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I'm Chris. I am currently a 78-year-old retiree in Tucson, Arizona. I've been around the Mac since 1984, did a lot with Apple user groups, and then was very fortunate to be able to work for Apple for some years, and then sort of finished off with University IT doing a lot of tech support with great professors. And so it's been a good life, and I really enjoyed the Apple technologies and the services and the toys. And what do you think, Marty?
I think we're all doing pretty good with this. What's interesting about this topic was some of the questions that were put together made me think about, hey, wait a minute, I can't remember when this first clicked for me in terms of continuity. And what I remember was disastrous attempts during a Mobile Me, maybe it was, or during the Me phase of Apple's products. And I was just struggling with it and wishing that it would work better and it would be more what I dreamed it to be. And after thinking about that, I thought about how it is so seamless right now. It's just really kind of, I don't think about it anymore. I don't have to worry about it anymore. So, that's my thoughts about this in terms of what we're going to talk about tonight. Hey, anything new or anything that y'all want to share from this week? Yeah, Charlie.
I mentioned this before the podcast, but for anybody out there that has Vision Pros, the entire Artemis mission is streaming spatially right now in real time. And on the Vision Pro, I mean, the TV coverage is fantastic, but watching it on a Vision Pro where it's in spatial is a totally different experience.
All right. Cool. Hey, I guess we should mention it's Apple's 50th birthday, or one of its many 50th birthdays. Happy birthday, Apple. Where's that new studio you promised us? A lot of people were expecting that there would be a product release today to kind of symbolize the the alpha to the omega of what Apple has done, and it didn't happen. And I think it makes only sense that they wouldn't do a product release on April Fool's Day, so not to confuse the marketing piece. But I was telling the story before the show that Dave Ginsburg sent me what looked like a legitimate ad from iFixit. iFixit is that that service that as soon as a new product comes out, they tear it apart, and then they post videos of it to show you all the pieces and parts of it. And iFixit did a announcement that MacBook Neos, Apple said MacBook Neos were all going to be recalled. And I was like, oh man, because we just started the MacBook Neo podcast. And I said, oh, this is a disaster. And then I realized it was iFixit. And when I clicked on the link, it was an article that they had put together that said, yeah, Apple decided it was too easy to fix, unlike its other products. So they're recalling them to make them more difficult to fix. It was just kind of a joke, a pun on the whole process of Apple products being kind of black boxes you can't get into. So yeah, that's my bit of news or my bit of experience today. Anything else? All right. Well, let me go into some resources. And these, again, links will be in the show notes of the video version of the show and also show notes of the podcast if you're just listening to us. The first one is a SlashGear article, 6 useful ways to use Apple's continuity feature on the iPhone and the Mac. And, continuity has come a long way, and the way in which Apple products can be connected has come a long way. But this is a good overview article. Second article from 9 to 5 Mac. These Apple magic moments show how macOS and iPadOS work together, and they have some video examples of that in there. Another article, Geeky Gadgets, and Geeky Gadgets has a essential Apple ecosystem features and setup for 2025. So it shows you how to kind of get things all connected in the Apple ecosystem. Good article by iMore on AirDrop, the ultimate guide. So that is a continuity thing that I think folks will talk about in terms of it. And we have a good article on AirDrop there. An article on how to use and troubleshoot AirDrop for simple file transfers and handoffs. So that comes from Macworld. And then another article from Macworld on how to use universal control and Sidecar to augment your use of the Mac. And then another article from MacRumors, universal control versus Sidecar. What's the difference between those? And I know we'll be talking about that tonight. And then finally, iPhone mirroring. This is a MacRumors article. iPhone mirroring in macOS Sequoia and iOS 18, everything you need to know in terms of how to set up iPhone mirroring. That has become one of my favorite continuity or connectivity types of aspects of the Apple ecosystem. So quite a few articles. Those links will be up there. Please take a look at them because they will educate you on the how-to in terms of setting things up. Panel discussion. We've got some questions. We've got 3 questions. I want to hear from everybody if we can. What's the one Apple feature that finally made your devices feel truly connected, and how did you discover it? Peter.
Well, I think it kind of crept up on me. I didn't get into Apple products initially because of the fabled Apple ecosystem. And I think it was fabled long before it was real and tangible. But universal control is the feature that made it feel solid and bulletproof to me. Being able to control my iPad from my MacBook, being able to control my MacBook from my iPad, that was just something that made me realize that I had already climbed on this big flywheel where using one device and switching to another and switching to another was just really seamless. Handoff, where you can start an app on one, continue it on another. Clipboard, copy something on one device, paste it on another. Just the simple thing. I don't know if it's considered part of continuity, but messages. I mean, I know lots of people who are my friends and use different hardware, or even some who use Mac hardware and aren't aware of everything it'll do, are always just surprised when, I start texting on my phone and then I just walk over to my computer or my iPad and I just continue on, in that message stream. So even though my devices are not, I guess, going back to the old school terminals at accessing a single computer somewhere, as I use them, it feels exactly that same way, and I appreciate that. Charlie.
Yeah, I use the universal control stuff a fair amount. Being able to do touch on my phone to move around on my laptop is fantastic. Um, and also this capability, the handoff stuff, works in specific applications. And the one where I really like it is Zoom. I can start a Zoom on my phone and then transfer it live to my Mac Zoom, and it just transitions. And it has the entire log that's gone so far. There's no break whatsoever. And then if I decide I want to walk off and with my phone, then I just transfer it back to my phone, go out to the kitchen, whatever, and then come back to the Mac. I mean, being able to go back and forth like that is fantastic. And I don't know if there's a Windows Android equivalent or not. It probably is if you go out and buy 10 different apps and configure them and all that junk. But it's all built into this stuff. Um, the other thing is I use my watch to find my phone. How many times have you done that where you put your phone down or it's slipped down in the cushions or whatever? And I use my phone that says, "Hey, make my phone beep," and then it tells me where the heck my phone is, and that's just it's fantastic. I love that. Also, I did that long distance. I went on a bike ride and for the first time in my neighborhood, and I had uh, a mount on my bike that wasn't great. And during the ride, my phone fell off my bike, and I didn't realize it. I didn't know where it was. So I went back home, went on my laptop, said "Find My," and found out where I dropped it on a corner. Fortunately, it wasn't in the street or anything. And then I used my phone to find it. I mean, my watch to find it again, and I got it within 10 minutes. I mean, wow. Uh, I would have lost my phone that day if I hadn't had that capability. Um, the other thing is I use notes all over the place on all my devices, and so I can scribble down notes wherever I am. I can also dictate, for example, into the phone and have it show up. And I also use a thing called Obsidian, which is a commercial product for note taking and stuff. And again, it's across all the platforms. So that's my list in this category.
Chris.
That's a great story, Charlie, about losing your phone. Um, I think,
Yeah.
the thing that really gelled in my mind, and I just call it Wi-Fi copy and paste. And I knew this was something Apple was working on, and you had to have, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth on and be on the same, Apple ID and all that stuff, which all of us are anyway, right? And I remember the night that I copied something on like my phone and then pasted it and pasted it in on my Mac, and I thought, oh man, this is magic. You know, AirDrop does a little of the same thing. We'll talk more about that. But, there are times when it's just so handy that I'm doing something on the phone. I walk in, I want to copy and paste it, and I just copy it and go onto the Mac and paste it, and there it is. And it reminded me of a fun story, too, that I was invited to take photos at the first 10-year Apple Group reunion at some point in California. And this was everybody that worked at Apple in the first 10 years. And I was invited by my friend Jim Armstrong, who'd been there all along, and I took a picture. I met Larry Tesler, the famous engineer, and took his picture, and I put it up on their website. He was a fascinating guy to meet, by the way. And somebody wrote on their Facebook page underneath his picture, "This is the man that invented copy and paste." And let that sink in for a minute, right? And, my colleagues at Stanford were absolutely blown away that one guy had invented copy and paste. They figured it had to be a whole team of engineers or something. They said, "Oh, no, that wasn't the way it happened." Anyway, fun story about that. Marty?
Yeah, I think for me, it was notes. And it's when I first noticed kind of the interoperability of it. I would use notes and compose them on my desktop. I use notes for a lot of things now, still do. So, for example, when I'm teaching group work tonight, I created a note GW4-1-26. So this is everything I'm going to do with my group work class tonight. And that includes dropping in the PowerPoint. It includes, a list of order of what I'm going to do things, other activities, things like that. That all become part of the experience of using notes for me. And what was amazing for me, and I really recognize that I'm kind of in a syncable ecosystem with Apple, was when I would do that at home on my desktop. I'd take my laptop to do what I needed to do for the class, and sure enough, I'd open up notes and it was all synced there and ready for me to go. That was my first venture into it, and as I said earlier, some of the cloud stuff that they did with early versions of Apple, the Apple Me, or what is it? Was it 95 or something like that, where you could sync things, just didn't work as well. Now it's really flawless and just incredible. When people run into problems with it, it's generally because they have multiple iCloud accounts or Apple accounts, and that creates problems for it. Second was desktop mirroring, which is like notes, but on your desktop. And it had a few snags along the way, but now it works pretty well. And what I've also noticed is I have a ton of stuff on my desktop at home here. I can get that same desktop, but on my laptop, but I don't have the space or storage space on it. So the decision is made to have those icons represented, and as I need it, I can download it. So as not to just overfill my laptop with and causing problems with sync. So that's kind of really the next thing that got me truly with the devices. And then lately, my third wow is the iPhone mirroring, which I have my iPhone in front of me sitting on a cradle, and I also have the app on my desktop. I can just click on that and do so much using my desktop on my iPhone and retrieve things and such that it's. I really like that added piece because it's so simple and it's now directly part of the operating system and part of what you can get on your macOS. You can suddenly open up your iPhone. And I use it for a lot of other things too. I use it for sometimes playing music, sometimes playing meditation stuff that I do, and it works very well through that iPhone mirroring process. So we got a message here from Vince Gutierrez, who says, enjoying the show. I have an Ecobee thermostats, and I like the ability to say, "Hey, S lady, where's my phone?" And the Ecobee will trigger my phone to chime. Desktop mirroring is really nice. So thanks for those comments. Second question. iCloud can feel like a black box. How do you keep your photos, files, and settings synced reliably across all your devices without losing anything? Peter.
Well, it might be a black box, but it's one that, as Apple likes to say, just works. I mean, for me, it just works now. I can't say in the past 3, 4, 5 years that I've had any troubles with iCloud. The Files app sees everything that's in iCloud on my iPhone and iPad, and if I had multiple Macs, or maybe if I just wanted to share everything in that same way with my other devices, I just set iCloud to sync desktop and documents like you do, Marty, having multiple Macs. And those folders all just get in sync with one toggle. Uh, they weren't always this reliable, as you mentioned. And I used to use Dropbox, which I still use occasionally to share with others. Although I would say in recent years, sharing with others who are non-Appleaholics seems to have shifted to Google Drive because that has a broader free tier. It's easier to set up and use than Dropbox, I think, today. And I think Dropbox client is like a little cycle hungry. Charlie.
I just use I just use iCloud and run it on my iPhone 16, and I just assume that it's going to sync right. I haven't had any problems with that. I mean, I could do an explicit sync, but I've never really seen the need to do that. But it is nice to be able to know that it's there, and it always seems to work for me. The other thing is, but when it comes to storage, though, I find the iCloud interface to be a little awkward at times. You can't. There are times where you can't select multiple easily, or at least I haven't figured it out yet. But I collaborate with so many other people that are not on Apple that I use Google Docs and the Google collaboration more than I use iCloud for the storage part.
Chris.
Yeah. Well, there's been a lot of evolution here, and there's been a lot of incremental improvement. It wasn't always as easy as today, but that's all done, and it works great today. The only exception I take is that a lot of people get the impression that iCloud is backing up their Apple photos, and it needs to be clarified that it doesn't really back them up. It synchronizes them, if I get that word out. If you delete a photo one place, it's gone everywhere. So that's the one thing I think that Apple could be a little bit clear about. But there are lots of possibilities with it, and it's just so helpful to have things. I use Notes a lot. About 3 years ago, I thought, well, let me see how many notes I've actually got, thinking I had maybe 400 or 500. Turned out I had 1,500 then. And so, notes are very useful, and to have that everywhere is just such an amazing feature, and that's all, with iCloud. And they've actually gone into more, and maybe someday we'll talk about this, but you can go to things like iCloud.com, and you can set up mail rules there, and then they'll be on all your devices instead of setting them up individually and mail on the various devices. So there's more to iCloud that can be done, and it's also incredibly secure, by the way. And that's for security geeks. You can read about how they do that stuff. It's pretty amazing. Marty?
Yeah, I have basically put all of my trust in iCloud. Not all of my trust in iCloud, but a good portion of my trust in iCloud, where I sync everything. So I have iCloud to be able to, like if I lose this laptop or it gets stolen, I know I can sync back down whatever I have stored in iCloud without any problem. I also back up everything on physical drives, and so that's that's sort of the secondary. I'm kind of a redundancy nut when it comes to backups, and then I also use other services. So I use Backblaze, and Backblaze is a cloud-based system that just like there's a bunch of them that you can do, and you can set particular folders or the whole device to be backed up to Backblaze, and that just gives me another external off device off-site way to make sure things are saved and updated. As a result, I've really never lost or had a failure. I don't use time capsule or time. Was it time capsule or time? Yeah, time capsule. I don't use that, and I know people who do, but it doesn't do much for me in terms of backup and recovery. So when you talk about organizing everything, I have photos set into particular folders that are related to particular incidents or particular times that I did things or trips that I went on and stuff like that. It's all organized that way in that fashion, but it's all most importantly backed up in iCloud and also in other hard media and other cloud systems. Third question is, if a friend just bought their first iPhone or iPad and wanted to connect it to their existing Apple devices, what would be the very first tip that you'd give them?
Well, the first tip I'd give them is I'd say that most of the apps, assuming you're in the Apple ecosystem, they take the responsibility for syncing. You don't need to do anything. Don't worry about it. Calendar, reminders, to-dos, word processing, spreadsheets. I mean, the list goes on and on for me. But I guess if I needed to give them a tip, I would tell them when picking some other oddball, or not oddball because there's things you use, applications that can be used. I pick one that can be used across devices and rely on the companies who sell them to make sure that they work well that way. So I'd advise others to stick to those kind of apps and I'd help them find ones that do that if they said I can't find one.
Charlie.
The first thing I do when a new person comes into the iPhone, I educate them on the basics. Cut and paste, select, and make sure I just grill the heck out of them on these gestures, because they can be used and then they eventually either I point out or they realize that these gestures and the copy paste being my example exist in all Apple apps, period. They always work the same way on everything. And that's a revelation to a lot of people, because a lot of times they get their device and no one ever tells them what copy paste does. Yikes. And they eventually pick it up, okay? But I think that ought to be essential to anybody, particularly anybody that's new to the iPhones, to get into that. Then figure out and then show them some other gestures, like how do you cancel your apps and how do you restart? What's the sequence to restart your iPhone if you need to? And knowing the button combinations and having them written down or have them practice it, whatever. So gestures, I would say teach the gestures first. And then I'd go into the wonders of synchronization, including the setting up of the iCloud. And that's pretty much it as far as what I'd tell them first.
Chris.
Yeah, I think observing how things cross-populate, particularly if they've got two devices, like maybe open notes on two different devices and type on one and watch as it shows up on the other one, or messages, or whatever, a calendar item, whatever it happens to be, and sort of talk about how and when those synchronizations happen, whether it's sort of automatically or by fetch or whatever it happens to be. And then sort of learning to respect the process and trust that it's just going to happen for them. And so that they don't try to copy and paste something that they don't need to because it's automatically going to synchronize. But it's easier in some ways. I could see I'm hearing what Charlie said. It's easier said than done if you're brand new and you haven't seen this before to really appreciate what that means. synchronizing over a network. But it's just part of the magic, and that kids pick up on really fast. But for adults, sometimes it takes a little bit longer. What do you think, Marty?
I think you've got some good points that you said, and sort of everybody said things that I think around this issue is pretty good, is very good. I didn't think of it until you mentioned it, that keep them focused on the Apple suite of apps where those things will sync automatically as long as they have them set up and they're syncing with iCloud. That'll go with them. I'm in a situation where, with my work environment being all Windows, the calendar doesn't play well with Windows, and particularly appointments that are scheduled on Windows calendar or through their scheduling system doesn't show up well for me on Mac. So I've had to use, and I'm not saying had to, I've had to use another application that syncs well, which is Fantastical, to manage my schedule, so I can have things imported from the Windows Outlook app into Fantastical, and things from the calendar app or any other calendars that I'm using can also appear on there. So there are some workarounds, but in most cases, most users can be happy just using the already built-in apps that Apple has available for them, like calendar, notes, those kinds, and pages, and all of the stuff that's built into the Apple ecosystem. My strategy would be to show them on my device, and then do it with them on theirs. And I think that the real issue here with new users, and we've gotten more people coming into the ecosystem because people are buying MacBook Neos, and the MacBook Neos are for those crossover folks, and they're loving it. But I think particularly people want to know that it's still there when they're trusting continuity, that you've left it on one place. Now, is it really going to be available on this other device? So that makes people anxious, particularly if it's an important document or things that they're trying to share across devices. And I think trying to assure them and trying to demonstrate to them that, look, it was here on my phone and now it's here on my Mac. This thing works. And you can kind of reduce your anxiety about it being there. And that will help people shift to this new idea of continuity. I would show them iPhone mirroring if they had a Mac, and Notes if they didn't. I mean, I'd show them both, but Notes will transfer between iPads and also transfer, of course, between iPhones. So those would be the kind of things that I would suggest. Chris?
Yeah, I think one kind of footnote on all of this is, if for some reason your second device, you're traveling or whatever, is not on Wi-Fi, is not on the network, guess what? It ain't going to happen. So that's a good troubleshooting step. If somebody says, well, gee, it's not happening, what's wrong? Well, you need to get on the same Wi-Fi, and that kind of thing. So that might be, Peter?
Well, I just want to say one thing to be a good Apple fanboy is that when I travel a lot, I'll log my iPhone or my MacBook or one of my devices into a network at a conference or a hotel or somewhere. And suddenly my other devices are just asking me, do you want to log in to the same network using the credentials you used with your other device? And I go, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Cool tip. Anything else from the group, or does it wrap it for now? So that's it for this episode of the Old Mac Gang podcast. Apple's ecosystem is one of its greatest strengths. And once you know how to use it, then it makes all of the joy that you can get out of a Apple device or devices real for you. And, we know folks who use other platforms and they wind up struggling with this kind of continuity stuff that comes so easily to Apple devices. So if you don't know about it, find someone who can teach you more about it. Find another old Mac gang member or someone who's willing to sit down and show you some of the things that their device does and how they can help you make it happen on your device. So all sorts of great things. I think we've already talked about what our next episode is going to be about, and I think it's going to be about calendars. Bob, who's not with us tonight, kind of brought that up, and we'll talk about calendar tips and tricks and how we use calendars in the next one. So try some of the things out. Look for all of the links to in the show notes of both the audio podcast, and if you want to find our channel, you can get all of the videos and this current video in about an hour. You'll have all of the show notes in there to connect with some really great articles around this topic. You can find us at youtube.com/@oldmacgang, the @ symbol, Old Mac Gang. You can also email us at the podtalknetwork@gmail.com, and you can check out our other shows that are listed on our website, Old Mac Gang being part of that, on the podtalk.net. That's our website for this. Well, thanks for this gang, Chris, Charlie, Peter, and we had some great listeners. We had Wentz Gutierrez and Gary Schreck was in there in the chat room, and other folks who were watching along while we did the stream. So thanks for joining us, and since you've listened, whether you like it or not, you're part of the Old Mac Gang.